"Sir, people like you don't walk into this bank carrying millions, so either leave now or explain why you're wasting everyone's time." Every conversation inside the marble lobby stopped as the branch executive's voice echoed across the polished floor, loud enough for customers waiting in line, loan officers behind glass offices, and the security guard near the entrance to hear every word. Marcus Williams stood only a few feet away, still wearing his reflective construction vest streaked with harmless gray dust from the downtown redevelopment site, his worn work boots leaving faint traces of concrete powder on the spotless floor. He tightened his grip on the thick document envelope resting against his chest, but never raised his voice. His expression remained calm, though dozens of curious eyes now measured him before he had spoken a single sentence. He had entered the bank with one purpose: complete a financial transaction before returning to a construction meeting scheduled less than an hour later. Instead, every second now threatened to derail the project depending on the documents inside his envelope. The executive stepped closer, adjusting the cuff of his expensive navy suit as though the presence of a construction worker somehow disrupted the order of his carefully managed world. "This branch handles serious business," he said, his tone controlled but unmistakably dismissive. "Our commercial clients don't show up looking like they've been pouring concrete all morning." A few customers exchanged uncomfortable glances. Others quietly looked away, pretending not to hear while listening to every word. Marcus slowly inhaled before answering with the same quiet respect he used with everyone on his job site. "I'm here to complete a scheduled transaction." His voice remained steady. No anger, no sarcasm, no attempt to embarrass anyone. The executive barely allowed him to finish. "Scheduled by who?" he asked sharply. "Because I don't see anyone expecting you." He gestured toward the glass entrance with an open hand, not touching Marcus, but making his message painfully clear. "You should probably try another branch." Marcus looked briefly toward the reception desk where employees avoided eye contact, uncertain whether to intervene or remain silent. He understood exactly what was happening. It wasn't about paperwork. It wasn't about procedure. Before anyone had checked his identification, before anyone had looked inside the sealed envelope, before anyone had asked a single legitimate banking question, someone had already decided exactly who he was based entirely on his skin color, dusty boots, and reflective vest. The security guard slowly approached, not aggressively but cautiously, responding to the executive's subtle signal. Marcus noticed him coming and offered a polite nod before the guard even spoke. Around them, conversations faded into complete silence. A little girl sitting beside her grandmother looked up from her coloring book, sensing the tension without understanding it. A businessman lowered his phone. A teller stopped counting cash halfway through a stack of bills. Every person inside the lobby could feel that something larger than an ordinary customer disagreement had taken hold of the room. Marcus knew he could leave. He could avoid the embarrassment, drive back to the construction site, and find another way to finish the transaction. But walking away would delay a project affecting hundreds of working families waiting for homes, jobs, and opportunities tied to the redevelopment effort. He glanced once at the envelope in his hands, then back at the executive whose confidence seemed absolute. Neither man realized that within minutes, something no one inside the building expected would quietly appear on a screen above them and force every assumption in that room to collide with the truth. Marcus did not answer immediately because he had learned years earlier that the loudest voice in the room was rarely the strongest one. Instead, he slowly placed the document envelope against his side and looked directly at the executive with calm, steady eyes that revealed neither fear nor resentment. That quiet composure had not appeared overnight. It had been shaped by countless mornings before sunrise, climbing steel frameworks while cold winds swept across unfinished buildings, pouring concrete under the heat of long summer afternoons, and returning home each evening carrying exhaustion without ever carrying bitterness. Every weekday began before 5 o'clock in the morning. Marcus would stop at the same neighborhood diner for black coffee, exchange a few words with the waitress who always remembered his order, then drive 22 miles across the city before the first crane began moving across the skyline. His hands carried permanent calluses from years of honest work, and the faded marks on his boots told the story of foundations, bridges, schools, and apartment buildings that thousands of strangers walked through every day without ever wondering who had built them. At the construction site, nobody cared about expensive watches or tailored suits. Respect came from showing up on time, keeping your promises, watching out for your crew, and refusing to cut corners even when nobody else was looking. Younger workers often asked Marcus for advice because he never made anyone feel small for asking questions. When a new apprentice struggled to read blueprints, Marcus stayed after his shift to explain every measurement until the young man understood. When another worker's truck broke down, Marcus quietly drove him home for nearly 2 weeks without expecting anything in return. His co-workers often joked that Marcus could solve problems without raising his voice, and although he laughed with them, he believed something much simpler. Every person deserved to be treated with dignity before they earned admiration. That belief had guided him through disappointments that would have hardened many people. More than once, he had watched customers receive warmer greetings simply because they wore expensive clothing instead of work uniforms. More than once, he had been mistaken for someone who did not belong inside offices where he had been invited for legitimate business. Each experience left a mark, but none of them convinced him to surrender his respect for other people. Standing inside the bank now, he recognized the familiar weight of those assumptions settling over the room once again. The executive looked at dusty boots and saw someone unimportant. He looked at a reflective safety vest and assumed limited education. He looked at dark skin and physical labor before he looked at the envelope carrying documents that represented months of careful planning. Marcus understood that none of those judgments had anything to do with who he truly was. Across the lobby, the security guard stopped beside him with a polite but uncertain expression. "Sir, may I please see your identification?" he asked quietly. Marcus nodded without hesitation, removed his wallet, and handed over both his driver's license and his bank card. His movements remained slow, deliberate, and completely cooperative. The guard examined them carefully, then glanced toward the executive, who still stood with folded arms as though expecting the conversation to end exactly the way he had predicted. Marcus could feel dozens of eyes moving between the three men. Nobody spoke. The silence itself seemed heavier than the marble surrounding them. He thought briefly about the construction crew waiting downtown. Concrete deliveries followed strict schedules. Steel installations depended on precise timing. Delays affected everyone. Yet even with those responsibilities pressing against the back of his mind, Marcus refused to rush or argue. Some moments demanded patience more than speed, and something deep inside him told him this morning was about to become one of those moments. He simply waited, holding on to the same quiet dignity that no title, no paycheck, and no stranger's opinion had ever been able to take away. Across the lobby, the executive accepted the security guard's glance as confirmation that he remained in complete control of the situation. His name carried weight inside the branch. Employees trusted his judgment because he had built a reputation for discipline, efficiency, and protecting the bank from unnecessary risk. Every morning followed the same carefully planned routine. He arrived before 8 o'clock, reviewed overnight financial reports, approved commercial transactions worth millions of dollars, and reminded his staff that appearances often revealed more than paperwork ever could. That philosophy had served him well throughout his career, or at least he believed it had. Years of promotions, performance awards, and praise from senior leadership had quietly reinforced the idea that he possessed an exceptional ability to judge character within seconds. Well-tailored suits, confident handshakes, polished speech, and expensive watches naturally earned his attention. Mud-on boots, wrinkled work clothes, and rough hands rarely did. Without realizing it, success had slowly narrowed the way he looked at people. He no longer saw individuals first. He saw categories: investors, executives, professionals, laborers, clients, strangers. Each category came with assumptions that formed almost instantly inside his mind before a single conversation even began. Standing several feet from Marcus, he believed he was protecting the standards of an institution trusted by successful businesses across the city. The spotless marble floors, elegant lighting, and quiet atmosphere represented everything he wanted the branch to project. In his mind, a construction worker carrying a weathered envelope simply did not fit that image. He convinced himself that asking difficult questions demonstrated professionalism rather than prejudice. The possibility that he might be wrong never truly entered his thinking. He noticed Marcus remaining calm despite the growing attention from everyone inside the lobby. Instead of interpreting that composure as confidence, he interpreted it as someone hoping not to be discovered. Confirmation bias quietly strengthened every assumption he had already made. He glanced toward the receptionist, who immediately looked back down at her computer screen, uncertain whether to continue assisting waiting customers or remain focused on the uncomfortable exchange unfolding only a few yards away. Two commercial banking associates paused outside a conference room after noticing the silence spreading throughout the branch. Neither interrupted. Both simply watched. The executive straightened his jacket once more before speaking in an even voice that sounded polite on the surface, but carried unmistakable skepticism beneath every carefully chosen word. "These procedures exist for everyone's protection," he said, making sure nearby customers could hear what sounded like a perfectly reasonable explanation. "We verify unusual situations before moving forward." Several people nodded slightly, hearing nothing obviously offensive in the statement itself. Yet Marcus understood that no unusual situation had existed until assumptions about his appearance created one. The executive extended his hand toward the envelope. "What exactly is inside?" he asked. Marcus answered honestly. "Business documents related to a scheduled transaction." The response contained nothing dramatic, nothing emotional, nothing confrontational. Still, the executive frowned almost imperceptibly, dissatisfied that the calm answer failed to support the story he had already written in his own mind. He expected nervousness. He expected hesitation. He expected inconsistency. Instead, he found quiet certainty. That certainty irritated him more than open disagreement would have. Behind the reception counter, one teller discreetly searched the appointment schedule, wondering whether the visitor's name might already be listed. Another employee quietly checked internal messages without drawing attention. Neither found anything immediately, but neither felt comfortable dismissing Marcus either. The atmosphere continued changing in subtle ways. Confidence that had initially surrounded the executive began to share space with uncertainty, although he remained unaware of the shift. He folded his arms again, believing patience would eventually expose whatever explanation he expected to uncover. Above them, the large digital financial display continued cycling through market information and community announcements without attracting anyone's attention. No one inside the lobby realized that within moments the same display would become the silent witness that challenged years of assumptions built not upon facts, but upon appearances. The security guard returned Marcus's identification with a respectful nod, quietly confirming that everything matched the information on file. Marcus thanked him, slipped his wallet back into his jacket, and lifted the document envelope once more. He believed the misunderstanding would finally end. "I would still like to complete my scheduled transaction," he said calmly, speaking with the same steady voice that had never changed since walking through the front doors. For a brief second, nobody answered. The executive looked from Marcus to the envelope, and then toward the commercial banking offices lining the far side of the lobby. Instead of allowing the transaction to move forward, he took another slow step closer. "Scheduled transactions usually involve clients who have appointments," he replied. "I do not see your name on my calendar." Marcus did not argue. "The appointment was arranged through the regional commercial office," he answered. "I was instructed to deliver these documents here this morning." The explanation was clear, direct, and completely reasonable, yet the executive's expression did not soften. He had already convinced himself that confidence without the appearance of wealth must be misplaced confidence. "Then you will not mind waiting until someone verifies that story," he said. Marcus glanced toward the large clock mounted above the reception area. Every passing minute mattered. The engineering team at the construction site expected signed paperwork before the afternoon planning session could begin, and several subcontractors had adjusted their schedules around today's timeline. Delays in construction rarely affected only one person. A single postponed approval could ripple across dozens of workers, equipment deliveries, inspections, and deadlines. Even so, Marcus refused to let urgency become frustration. "I understand verification," he replied. "Please contact whoever you need." His willingness to cooperate surprised several employees standing nearby. They had expected raised voices by now. Instead, the only tension filling the lobby came from silence and expectation. The executive motioned toward a seating area, but did not invite Marcus to sit. The gesture felt less like hospitality than supervision. Marcus remained standing, holding the envelope carefully against his side as though protecting something far more important than paper. Around the lobby, ordinary banking activity slowed almost to a standstill. A retired couple waiting to open a certificate of deposit quietly postponed their conversation. A young entrepreneur checking business account paperwork looked repeatedly toward the front desk instead of his laptop. Even employees processing routine transactions found themselves listening while pretending not to. The branch had become unusually quiet, not because anyone had ordered silence, but because uncertainty naturally demanded attention. Behind the reception counter, one employee finally located a message from the previous afternoon referencing a confidential commercial delivery scheduled for that morning. The message contained only limited information and no customer photograph, but it was enough to make her hesitate before dismissing Marcus's explanation. She discreetly forwarded the note to an operations supervisor without announcing what she had found. Meanwhile, the executive continued asking measured questions. "What company do you work for?" Marcus answered immediately with the name of the construction firm managing one of the city's largest redevelopment projects. The executive recognized the company. It had recently appeared in local business news connected to several major investments. Even so, he assumed Marcus simply worked on the labor side of the operation and could not possibly be involved in anything requiring direct contact with commercial banking executives. "And these documents concern that project?" the executive asked. Marcus nodded once. "They are time-sensitive." The executive folded his arms again. "Then whoever prepared them should have sent someone from the corporate office." Marcus met his eyes without the slightest trace of resentment. "They sent the person they trusted." Those 6 words lingered in the air far longer than either man expected. No one responded immediately. Across the room, the operations supervisor quietly opened the forwarded internal message while simultaneously checking another secure notification that had just appeared on her computer. Her expression changed almost imperceptibly. Before she could speak, the enormous digital financial display suspended its normal market updates for the first time that morning, replacing them with an unfamiliar system screen that caused every employee inside the branch to instinctively look up at exactly the same moment. Every pair of eyes followed the massive display as the familiar market charts disappeared, replaced by a secure internal verification screen that very few people inside the branch had ever seen. A soft notification tone echoed through the lobby, followed almost instantly by matching alerts from computers behind the reception counter. Employees looked at one another with puzzled expressions before turning toward the operations supervisor, who remained frozen for a brief moment while reading the information now appearing across her monitor. The executive frowned and looked up at the display before glancing back toward Marcus. Whatever was happening, it was clearly unexpected, yet he refused to allow uncertainty to weaken his authority. "It is probably a routine system update," he said confidently, speaking almost as much to reassure himself as everyone else. No one answered. The operations supervisor quietly picked up her office telephone, listened for only a few seconds, then stood from her desk with an expression that immediately caught the attention of nearby employees. She walked briskly toward the executive without taking her eyes off the secure message displayed on the tablet in her hands. Before she reached him, another notification sounded throughout the commercial banking department. 2 senior relationship managers emerged from their offices almost simultaneously, neither speaking, both studying identical messages on their devices. The atmosphere shifted again, this time from awkward curiosity to unmistakable uncertainty. Marcus remained exactly where he had been standing from the beginning, his posture relaxed, his breathing steady, his weathered envelope still tucked securely beneath one arm. He had no idea what information was appearing inside the bank system, but he knew the documents he carried had been prepared carefully by people who never left important details to chance. Across the room, the executive noticed the unusual reactions from senior staff and stepped toward the operations supervisor before she could reach Marcus. "What is going on?" he asked quietly. She hesitated. "I believe commercial operations is requesting immediate verification of a priority transaction." The executive extended his hand for the tablet. After reading only the first few lines, his confident expression tightened almost imperceptibly. The message referenced the scheduled delivery of confidential redevelopment financing documents tied to one of the largest urban renewal projects in the state. It also instructed the branch to provide immediate assistance upon the courier's arrival and to notify regional leadership before processing any associated materials. The executive looked back toward Marcus almost instinctively, then immediately searched for reasons why the situation still could not possibly involve the man standing quietly in dusty work boots. His mind continued searching for explanations that protected his earlier assumptions. Perhaps Marcus was simply delivering papers for someone else. Perhaps another representative was still on the way. Perhaps the system contained incomplete information. Those possibilities felt more comfortable than accepting he might have misjudged the situation from the very beginning. "Has the courier been identified?" he asked. The operations supervisor glanced toward Marcus before answering carefully. "The message says identification must match before the transaction begins." The executive looked toward the security guard. "You already checked his identification." The guard nodded respectfully. "Everything matched the account information that I was authorized to review." Those words landed heavily inside the suddenly quiet lobby. Customers who had been pretending not to listen now openly watched every movement. Employees exchanged uncertain glances without saying a word. Even the executive sensed the balance inside the room beginning to shift, although he still resisted drawing the obvious conclusion. Marcus finally spoke after several long seconds of silence. "If you would like, I can present the authorization letter that came with the documents." His voice remained calm, free of pride or resentment. He offered help instead of criticism, cooperation instead of accusation. That simple response unsettled the executive more than open anger ever could have. The man he had expected to become defensive continued responding with patience and respect. Before anyone replied, the enormous display changed once again. The secure verification screen disappeared, replaced by the live logo of the bank's regional commercial division, followed by the words, "Regional Executive Conference Connecting." Every employee inside the branch instinctively turned toward the display. The operations supervisor straightened her posture. The relationship managers quietly moved closer. The executive stood completely still, watching the connection establish while an uncomfortable realization slowly began pressing against every confident assumption he had made only minutes earlier. The enormous display finished connecting, but instead of immediately revealing a speaker, the screen showed only the bank's regional seal accompanied by a message requesting all commercial personnel to remain available. The quiet that settled over the lobby felt almost tangible. Even the usual sounds of printers, keyboards, and ringing telephones seemed to disappear beneath the weight of anticipation. Sunlight streamed through the towering glass walls, casting long reflections across the polished marble floor until they reached Marcus's worn work boots. The faint traces of dried concrete that had seemed so out of place only minutes earlier now appeared strangely insignificant against the stillness surrounding him. He lowered his eyes briefly toward the envelope resting securely beneath his arm. Inside were documents he had been trusted to protect from the moment they left the regional office. That trust mattered more to him than recognition, titles, or appearances ever could. He remembered the project superintendent placing the sealed envelope into his hands before sunrise and saying only one sentence. "We trust you because you never treat responsibility like it belongs to someone else." Those words had stayed with him throughout the drive across the city. He had accepted the assignment without asking why executives had chosen a construction worker instead of someone from an administrative office. His answer had been simple. If the work needed to be done honestly, he would do it. Across the lobby, the executive no longer stood with the same relaxed confidence he had displayed earlier. His folded arms slowly dropped to his sides as he continued watching the display, waiting for answers that refused to arrive quickly. For the first time that morning, uncertainty occupied the space where certainty had always lived. He replayed every conversation that had taken place since Marcus entered the branch. Every question, every assumption, every conclusion formed before any evidence existed. None of it could be taken back now. The operations supervisor quietly stepped beside him without speaking. She had worked in commercial banking long enough to recognize that priority verifications of this level almost always involve transactions carrying extraordinary importance. Whatever was happening had clearly moved beyond an ordinary customer visit. Marcus remained completely still. He noticed the anxious expressions spreading among employees, but he felt no satisfaction. Embarrassing another person had never interested him. On the construction site, mistakes happened every week. Measurements had to be corrected. Deliveries arrived late. Equipment occasionally failed inspections. The strongest foremen were never the loudest ones. They solved problems first and discussed blame later. That habit followed him everywhere he went. Near the waiting area, the little girl who had been coloring earlier looked toward her grandmother and whispered softly, "Why is everybody so quiet?" Her grandmother smiled gently before answering, "Sometimes people are waiting to learn something important." The innocent observation seemed to echo across the room in ways neither of them realized. The executive heard it. Marcus heard it. Several employees heard it as well. Nobody responded because everyone sensed the same thing. Something important was indeed approaching. A soft electronic tone interrupted the silence once again. This time it came from the operations supervisor's tablet. She read the newest message carefully before taking a slow breath. "Regional leadership has confirmed the courier has already arrived," she said quietly. The executive immediately looked around the lobby, instinctively expecting another visitor to enter through the revolving doors. No one came inside. The entrance remained closed. Customers waiting near the front windows also turned toward the doors before gradually realizing the obvious. There was only one person standing in the lobby carrying a sealed commercial document envelope. The operations supervisor slowly lifted her eyes toward Marcus. The security guard did the same. One by one, employees followed until the room settled into complete silence once again. Marcus offered the same calm expression he had carried from the moment he first walked through the entrance. He neither stepped forward nor attempted to explain anything before being asked. He simply waited with quiet patience, allowing the truth to arrive at its own pace. Above them, the regional seal finally faded from the enormous display, and the live conference connection began to open, bathing the lobby in the cool glow of a screen that was about to reveal whether first impressions had been correct or whether an entire room had mistaken appearance for character. The screen brightened, and the face of the regional executive appeared before the entire lobby. He did not begin with greetings or introductions. Instead, he looked directly toward the camera with the calm focus of someone expecting an important assignment to have already been completed. "Good morning. I would like to personally confirm that our priority courier has arrived safely with the redevelopment authorization package." No one answered immediately. The branch executive instinctively stepped forward, attempting to regain control of the conversation. "Yes, we have someone here with documents that are currently being verified." The regional executive nodded politely before asking the next question. "Has Mr. Marcus Williams been escorted to the executive conference room?" The words settled over the lobby with almost unbelievable weight. The branch executive remained completely still. The operations supervisor slowly turned toward Marcus, her expression shifting from uncertainty to immediate understanding. Several employees exchanged silent glances, while customers who had witnessed the confrontation only minutes earlier looked from Marcus to the giant display and back again. The regional executive continued speaking without realizing the atmosphere inside the branch had completely changed. "Mr. Williams is serving as the authorized representative for today's transaction involving the Riverside Community Redevelopment Initiative. The documentation he carries authorizes the release of financing connected to one of the largest neighborhood revitalization projects our institution has supported this year. Please ensure he receives every courtesy and assistance necessary." A silence unlike any before filled the room. The executive looked toward the weathered envelope Marcus had protected from the moment he entered the building. Suddenly, it no longer appeared ordinary. It represented months of planning, legal review, engineering approvals, and financial commitments affecting hundreds of construction jobs, local businesses, and families waiting for affordable housing. The operations supervisor quietly stepped closer to Marcus. "Mr. Williams," she said with genuine respect, "may I please receive the authorization package?" Marcus smiled politely and handed her the envelope with both hands. There was no dramatic gesture, no trace of satisfaction, only the same professionalism he had shown from the beginning. She carefully opened the sealed package, removed the certified documents, and compared each page with the secure digital records now appearing on her tablet. Every signature matched. Every authorization number aligned perfectly. Every verification indicator changed from pending to confirmed. Moments later, The enormous display updated automatically. A secure transaction summary appeared across the screen, identifying the commercial account associated with the redevelopment initiative. The account balance displayed beneath the project name reflected resources measured not in thousands, but in hundreds of millions of dollars committed to rebuilding neighborhoods, supporting contractors, funding suppliers, and creating long-term opportunities across the city. A quiet gasp spread naturally through the lobby. Nobody reacted because of personal wealth. They reacted because every assumption made only minutes earlier had collapsed beneath undeniable facts. The branch executive stared at the display without speaking. His confidence disappeared beneath the realization that he had never questioned Marcus because of incomplete paperwork. He had questioned him because dusty boots, rough hands, and dark skin had seemed incompatible with the importance of the business standing before him. Marcus noticed the expressions around the room, but felt no desire to prolong anyone's embarrassment. He simply waited while the operations supervisor completed the final verification. The regional executive smiled warmly from the screen. "Please thank Mr. Williams on behalf of everyone involved. His reliability has earned complete confidence from every organization participating in this project. We appreciate the professionalism he brings every single time." The connection ended as quietly as it had begun, leaving the display showing only the completed verification notice. No one moved for several seconds. The same lobby that had once measured Marcus by the dust on his boots now stood surrounded by undeniable proof that integrity, responsibility, and trust had never depended on appearance. Even more powerful than the balance displayed across the screen was the truth it revealed. The greatest value Marcus had carried into the bank that morning had never been inside the account. It had been inside the character he refused to abandon, even when everyone around him had expected him to become someone smaller than he truly was. The operations supervisor carefully organized the verified documents before placing them inside a secure presentation folder and extending both hands toward Marcus with unmistakable respect. "Thank you for your patience, Mr. Williams," she said quietly. "Everything has been confirmed exactly as Regional Commercial Operations described." Marcus accepted the folder with a gentle smile and a simple nod. "Thank you," he replied. "I know everyone has a responsibility to protect the bank." His answer surprised several employees standing nearby because it contained no trace of resentment. The branch executive remained motionless for another long moment, watching the exchange unfold only a few feet away. The confidence that had shaped every decision earlier that morning had been replaced by something far heavier. He replayed every sentence he had spoken before checking a single fact. He remembered pointing toward the exit. He remembered questioning whether Marcus belonged inside the building. He remembered assuming that expensive clients arrived wearing tailored suits instead of reflective safety vests. None of those memories could be softened now because every witness remained in the lobby. The customers had heard the accusations. The employees had watched the assumptions unfold. More importantly, Marcus had experienced every one of them with quiet dignity. The executive slowly walked toward him until only a respectful distance separated them. For the first time since Marcus entered the branch, the executive lowered his head slightly before speaking. "Mr. Williams," he began, his voice noticeably quieter than before, "I owe you a sincere apology." Nobody interrupted. Even the sounds of routine banking seemed to pause once again. "I formed an opinion before I knew anything about you," he continued. "I judged your appearance instead of your character. I questioned your purpose instead of asking respectful questions. I represented this institution poorly, and I represented myself even worse." Marcus looked at him calmly without triumph or satisfaction. The apology did not erase what had happened, but he could hear genuine regret behind every word. The executive continued, no longer speaking to protect his reputation, but to acknowledge the truth. "There is no professional standard that justifies making another person feel unwelcome because of how they look or the work they do. I failed to remember that this morning." Marcus remained silent for several seconds before answering. His response came with the same calm voice that had never changed from the beginning. "Everyone deserves to be treated with respect before they have to prove they deserve it." The words settled across the lobby with quiet force. No one argued because no one could. Marcus glanced briefly toward the polished floor before continuing. "If today's documents had belonged to someone else wearing a business suit, I do not think this conversation would have happened." The executive closed his eyes for a brief moment, accepting the painful truth inside that observation. "You are right," he answered honestly. And hearing those words is difficult because they are true. The security guard shifted his weight slightly before extending his hand toward Marcus. "Thank you for the way you handled today," he said. "You treated everyone here with respect, including me." Marcus shook his hand warmly. "You were simply doing your job." Nearby employees exchanged thoughtful looks with one another. Some quietly reflected on their own first impressions. Others wondered how many ordinary people had entered the branch carrying invisible stories that no expensive clothing could ever reveal. The operations supervisor turned toward the staff gathered behind the reception counter. "Let us make certain every customer who walks through these doors feels welcome," she said. "Not after verification. From the very beginning." Several employees nodded without hesitation. The branch executive looked toward Marcus one final time before speaking again. "I hope someday you will allow us another opportunity to serve you properly." Marcus smiled gently, not because he had won an argument, but because another human being had chosen honesty over pride. "People learn," he said. "What matters is what they choose after they learn." Those simple words carried more weight than any balance displayed on the screen ever could. Around them, conversations slowly returned, keyboards resumed clicking, telephones rang once again, and customers continued their ordinary banking business. Yet something inside the branch had quietly changed. The polished marble, the glass walls, and the expensive furnishings remained exactly the same, but the people standing among them no longer looked at the construction worker in the reflective vest as someone who needed to prove his worth. They finally saw the man who had been standing there with quiet dignity from the very first moment. Marcus thanked the operations supervisor one final time before placing the secured folder carefully beneath his arm and walking toward the glass entrance with the same quiet pace he had maintained all morning. The branch executive reached the door ahead of him and gently pulled it open without saying another word. Marcus acknowledged the gesture with a respectful nod before stepping outside into the bright afternoon sunlight. Warm light reflected across the city streets, where traffic moved steadily and construction cranes stretched high above the skyline. His pickup truck remained exactly where he had parked it earlier, coated with the same layer of ordinary construction dust that had drawn so much attention only an hour before. Nothing about the truck had changed. Nothing about his work clothes had changed. Nothing about his appearance had changed. The only thing that had changed was the way people had finally chosen to see him. As Marcus started the engine and drove toward the redevelopment site, the events inside the bank gradually became quieter in his thoughts. He did not replay the humiliation. He did not imagine clever responses he wished he had given. He focused instead on the work still waiting for him because hundreds of people depended on projects far more important than his own pride. 20 minutes later, he turned through the familiar entrance of the construction site, where the sounds of diesel equipment, backup alarms, and workers calling measurements to one another filled the air with purposeful energy. Several members of his crew waved as he parked beside stacks of steel beams. "Everything go all right?" one foreman asked while reviewing structural drawings spread across the hood of a pickup truck. Marcus smiled as he handed over the secured folder. "Everything was completed," he answered simply. The foreman nodded with relief. "Good. We can keep moving." There were no speeches, no applause, no celebration. The engineering team immediately returned to discussing foundation schedules, delivery times, and inspection dates. Concrete trucks continued arriving through the gate. Tower cranes slowly rotated overhead, carrying heavy loads into position. Welders prepared the next steel connections while electricians organized materials for the afternoon shift. The city continued growing because ordinary people quietly continued doing extraordinary work without expecting recognition. Marcus picked up his hard hat, secured the chin strap, and walked toward the structure rising against the afternoon sky. As he climbed the temporary staircase to the next level, he paused for only a brief moment to look across the neighborhood surrounding the project. Families would eventually live inside these buildings. Children would play in nearby parks. Small businesses would open along the streets below. Teachers, nurses, firefighters, mechanics, office workers, and construction crews would all become part of a stronger community because thousands of honest decisions had been made by people whose names most residents would never know. Behind him, downtown office towers reflected the afternoon sun, including the bank branch he had left only a short time earlier. Somewhere inside that building, conversations were probably still continuing. Employees might remember the lesson for years. The branch executive might think differently the next time someone wearing dusty boots stepped through the front doors. Marcus hoped so, not because he wanted people to remember him, but because he wanted the next person to receive the respect that should never depend upon appearance. He adjusted his safety glasses, joined his crew, and returned to measuring steel exactly as he had done countless mornings before. His hands moved with practiced confidence while the skyline slowly reached higher above the city. The greatest foundations were never built from concrete alone. They were built from trust, responsibility, humility, and the quiet courage to treat every person with dignity before asking who they were. As the golden light settled across the unfinished buildings, Marcus continued working beside his crew, one worker among many, his reflective vest glowing softly beneath the evening sun. The city would remember the completed buildings for generations, but very few people would ever know the name of the man who helped build both the structures standing above the streets and the invisible bridge of understanding quietly strengthened inside one bank on an ordinary morning.